The Oklahoma City Thunder offseason continues as we're just days away from the 2023 NBA draft. On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we have another NBA draft player profile for you, this time breaking down the strengths, the weaknesses, where he's available at, and how he fits with OKC in Shaedon Sharpe. Plus, we're going to give you some news and notes from the offseason, including an updated OKC workout tracker for the NBA draft and what Darius Baisley's up to this offseason. All of that and more coming up on today's Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we have another 2022 NBA draft profile for you, plus an update on the Thunder workout tracker, news and notes from around the offseason. Should you be worrying right now about the roster and the future first-round picks the Thunder are compiling? And, of course, our draft profile on Shaedon Sharpe, one of the more interesting prospects for OKC in this draft, especially with the news that we got over the weekend regarding Shaedon Sharpe's availability in this draft. So a lot to get to. Yesterday's podcast, we went and broke down the entire JaMychal Green trade, trading pick 30 to Denver. Also talked about Russell Westbrook's community event and Shaedon Sharpe's camp, loving OKC. So yesterday, a loaded show as well. Go back and listen to that one if you have not already. Today's show is brought to you by Arcade 1UP. Bring home a slam dunk. Introducing NBA JAM Shaq edition from Arcade 1UP. Pre-order now to play with legends. Arcade 1UP is the place for authentic gaming experiences featuring licensed retro games from the golden age of arcades. So check out Arcade 1UP. Let's start with the OKC workout tracker because this is going to be very interesting for Thunder fans. Today, there was picture surfacing of Shaedon Sharpe in OKC at the airport. Jalen Williams posted on social media about his workout. So we have, I should say, Shaedon Sharpe has already worked out. Jalen Williams has already worked out. Okay, Baji already worked out. Jabari Smith Jr. had pictures taken today at the airport in OKC, which, of course, leads to his workout, which he already admitted in a clip we played last week talking about how he's only going to work out for OKC in Orlando, but he's in town right now talking to OKC and working out with OKC. And then, of course, there was those pictures of Paolo Banchero circling around, maybe in OKC, maybe it's Paolo Banchero. So if you would count him, the most 5 recent ones are Shaedon Sharpe, Jalen Williams, Okay Agbaji, Jabari Smith Jr., and Paolo Banchero. And then also Jaden Ivey, Johnny Davis, Ty Washington, Terry Eason, Jeremy Sohan, Patrick Garland Jr., Malachi Branham, Kendall Brown, Bryce McGowan, Drew Timme, Isaiah Wong. Both Timme and Wong have gone back to school. Lester Quinos and Deron Sebrin have also worked out for OKC, as have Devon Warren, Tyson Jolly, John Knight. Keon Ellis has worked out twice for OKC, and Jordan Goldwire. So those are the workouts for OKC so far. Now remember, while this is only 23 names deep, the Thunder do not release every player they've worked out. They don't release a single player if they've worked out. So the only names we know from OKC come from, talking to agents, talking to, scouts, whoever, plus players' Instagrams, players' social media accounts leak them. Like Ty Washington was one that was leaked on Instagram. So was Jalen Williams. Instagram, stuff like that is how we find out. Other teams release full lists. Other teams also have media availabilities, which is how we got that Jabari Smith clip of who he's going to work out for from the Orlando media. So the Thunder don't choose to do that. I like not doing it. I like keeping your leverage as best you can if you're an organization and picking in the top of the draft especially. So I get it. Just know the Thunder are going to work out nearly every prospect in the draft. So almost everyone that you like in the draft and everyone who you want the Thunder to work out for, you'll work out with, they're going to do it. This is going to be something they do every year. News and notes, Darius Baisley posted on Instagram, not only has he released a song called Oh My, so him and Trey Mann both released music this offseason so far, but he's up to 219 pounds. He was listed last year at 208 by the Thunder official roster. He says he's striving for 220 or 225, but right now he's already 219 in the early stages of the offseason. What does that mean? Who knows, right? Or is he trying to bulk up to play small ball 5? Is this a Thunder thing? Do the Thunder want him to get bigger as a mission? Like, obviously, I don't think he's just willy-nilly bulking. I think that he's talked with the team about what to do or how to do it or if it's a good idea or whatever. But it's interesting. I mean, I think that you can see Bazley play a new role this year. He was really good. He really good defensively last year. Bulking up and keeping his athletic burst will make him even better this year, especially at the end of the floor. So that's awesome to see from Bazley. He looks like he's having a very fun offseason. He had a birthday over the weekend as well. So congrats to him. The NBA media draft guide was released, and it features, it features profiles on a lot of these guys, just kind of saying strengths, kind of eye-popping numbers, quotes from people, and personal info about them, so you kind of know more about them kind of more intimately. For Shaedon Sharpe, he got a quote from Coach Cal, and Calipari, the coach at Kentucky, praised Shaedon Sharpe's work ethic. I find that was notable just because there was always this narrative about his work ethic and narrative about, what happened at Kentucky. And look, Coach Calipari does benefit from it popping up on ESPN, Shaedon Sharpe - Kentucky. And in 20 years, there's not going to be many people who remember that Shaedon Sharpe never played a game for Kentucky. It's just going to say Kentucky had X amount of draft picks, right? So he does still benefit from Shaedon Sharpe being drafted and drafted very highly. But it was interesting that he picked kind of his work ethic as the standout. Also talked about his athletic burst and talked about how he's a really good shooter and things like that. But the thing that stood out was Coach Cal's comments about his work ethic. He said that he admires how hard he worked to get to this point and take his game to the next level. So that's all the news and notes. I did want to touch on one topic real quick before we get into the Shaedon Sharpe profile. I've seen a lot of worry about the future first-round picks and the future of this roster, and I've seen a lot of people talk about, well, they've got to make a trade soon because they're running out of roster spots. Well, when you sit back and think about it, they're really not, right? It is far too soon to worry about this. It is very, very far too soon to worry about this. The Thunder are not even close to the danger zone yet. Here's a list of free agents after this season. So after the 2022-23 season, all of these guys are going to be free agents. And this is pending Lou Dort. It seems pretty clear that the Thunder are going to decline Lou Dort's option and work out a long-term contract. Keith Smith said that again this week on the front office show more definitively. So it seems pretty clear that's kind of what's going to happen for the Thunder and for Lou Dort. So let's take Lou Dort out of it because although he technically is listed right now as a future free agent, it appears that he's going to work out a long-term deal this offseason. Here's all the players that are eligible to be free agents next year by the Thunder. JaMychal Green, Derek Favors, Darius Bazley, Ty Jerome, Mike Muscala, Kenrich Williams, and Isaiah Roby. They have options that they can decline on Taylor Maledon, Alexei Pokashevsky, and then Vit Krejci and Aaron Wiggins both have non-guarantees in their deal, so you can waive them without paying them the full salary. That's 11 total players who the Thunder have the option to no longer roster in the 2023 offseason. Of those 11 total players, JaMychal Green, Derek Favors, Darius Bazley, Ty Jerome, Mike Muscala, Kenrich Williams, Isaiah Roby, Taylor Maledon, Pokashevsky, Vit Krejci, and Aaron Wiggins. How many of them do you have to keep? How many of them do you need to keep? How many of them do you want the Thunder to keep? The roster might be sitting, at 16 right now and talking about a roster crunch because you're going to bring in a couple more guys in the draft, up to 3 guys in the draft as it stands today. You could be worrying about it, but in reality, this is going to clear up very soon. And what the JaMychal Green trade did was it created a roster spot for next season. So in terms of what's going to happen in October, the JaMychal Green trade did not save a roster spot because you were going to have to roster pick 30. You're going to have to roster JaMychal Green, right? So in the immediate future, it didn't. However, what it did was create long-term flexibility for 2023, which has been a big selling point from Sam Presti and this organization. Because guess what? In 2023, JaMychal Green's a free agent, and you're not going to re-sign him. If you can't trade him between now and then, you're not going to re-sign him. So that's a roster spot that is just poof, gone and open for somebody else. Whereas if you picked up pick 30, you're not going to get rid of that guy in one season. You're just not. If you use the first round pick, you're not going to get rid of them in the first year. So it did open a roster spot for next season and for the future that pick 30 would not have, while also gaining back value of a first round pick in the future whenever you're supposed to be very good in 2027 that you can use as a trade piece in 26 or 25 or whenever you think you're going to be good to catapult yourself into a range to solidify your roster. So again, going back to the roster crunch, right? You don't want to bring back Green. You don't want to bring back Derek Favors. Mike Muscala, while he has the ties to the organization and loves being here, given his age, given the circumstances, you're probably not going to bring him back after this season. That's 3 right there that are gone. Ty Jerome, to me, has not shown enough to warrant you factoring him into your long-term plans. That's 4 gone already. Make or break year for Darius Bazley. You want to bring back Kenny Hustle. And then again, I've often said, while I like Isaiah Roby's career in the NBA will be a long one as a rotational piece, but it doesn't necessarily line up to be with OKC. Let's say you've got 5 now open roster spots heading into next season. Plus, you have options on Taylor Malvon, Pokusevski, Vic Krejci, and Aaron Wiggins. Wiggins and Krejci on non-guaranteed deals, and then true options on Poku and Malvon. I think that they pick up the Poku option. I think that they like Vic Krejci and Aaron Wiggins, especially if they have a good year this year. So I'm going to factor them in as well. But I'm not sure Taylor Malvon survives till October, much less next October. So it's very clear that it's going to be very easy to open up roster spots on this team. The Thunder are not going to be strapped in a situation where, oh my gosh, we have all these first round picks and we have literally nowhere to put them. Way too soon for that. Way too soon for that. That should not even be a registered thought in your mind. Consolidation right now should not even be a mandatory thought in your mind. It will happen eventually, but we're not even scratching the surface of when you're going to need to consolidate assets. Not even scratching the surface. So that's where we're at with the OKC roster. Now, let's talk coming up about Shaedon Sharpe, his NBA draft profile, just talking about his strengths, his weaknesses, where he's going to fall in the draft, and how he fits with OKC if he were to land here. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Arcade 1UP. Boom shakalaka, we have big news. This one, the one and only NBA Jam is back at Arcade 1UP. The leader in at-home retro arcade games is not only bringing the best game ever back, but they've made it bigger than ever with a, wait for it, Shaq Edition machine. Folks, people are obsessed with NBA Jam, and I am thrilled to tell our listeners that you can once again play hoops with NBA legends in this arcade classic by checking out Arcade 1UP. Jump clear across the court and set the ball on fire, and one of the first sport video games ever to feature real and digitized NBA licensed teams, no fouls, no free throws, and no quarters required. Compete with friends and family throughout the all-new Wi-Fi leaderboards, making you more connected than ever. Pre-order now from arcade1up.com. That's arcade number 1 up.com. Arcade the number 1 up.com. For the estimated early September ship date. Arcade 1UP is the place for fun. They've given more classic like Golden Tee, Mortal Kombat, and many other entities starting at just $399. So check this out. They're giving away an NBA JAM Shaq edition to a Locked On listener. To enter to win this opportunity to get a game console for your man cave, go to arcade1up.com/lockedon. That's arcade, the number 1 up.com/lockedon. You've got until July 8th to enter to win an NBA Jam Shaq Edition console. Don't miss. Enter today. Who are you going to play NBA Jam with at arcade1up.com? We are back on the Locked On Thunder Podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. It's time for the Ultimate Mock Draft, which starts June 16th. With over 50 insiders, nothing equals the Ultimate Mock Draft. Locked On Big Board Draft Experts plus Odyssey Experts. The first pick's June 16th. Search Ultimate Mock Draft and follow along right now so you do not miss a pick. And folks, June 16th is not only the number one overall pick, it also includes our pick at number 2 in the first couple selections in the draft as well. So you can go check out who I picked on behalf of the Thunder at number 2 overall in the 2022 NBA Ultimate Mock Draft. So go search it up today and find it out and subscribe to it so you're ready to go. It has former players, former NBA executives, and of course, all of our experts here at Locked On the pod. You cannot find that anywhere else. So go check out the Ultimate Mock Draft. Let's talk about Shaedon Sharpe. His draft profile overall, he's 6'5" in shoes, 198 pounds. He has a 6'11" wingspan, according to the NBA Combine. 19 years old. He went to Kentucky-ish, right? He was technically at Kentucky. Never played a game, though, of course. He's an elite athlete with plus perimeter shooting and ball handling, and there's reason to believe in his defensive upside, given his frame, given his athletic ability, and his lateral quickness. So what are his strengths? This dude can soar to the rim. He can absolutely jump out of a gym, and I posted a clip this weekend on Twitter where his eyes got above the rim with ease whenever he's soaring to block a shot and help defense. It was awesome. He can get to the highest point of his jump without a long gather, without taking a lot of time, and that kind of pogo stick nature. If you play NBA 2K and your My Player gets the pogo stick badge, that's kind of modeled after Shaedon Sharpe. Obviously not really, but that embodies what Shaedon Sharpe can do. He can fly to the rim with quickness and repeatability. It's going to be awesome to watch him lock in and develop defensively, especially in an environment that will bring more intensity than these AAU style games that you're getting to see. You can really see by his frame, his speed, his athletic ability, his length, his lateral quickness, how he can be a very good switchable defender in the modern NBA. And it seems as though he truly wants to develop on that end of the floor, if you believe the ESPN reports from Jonathan Givony this last weekend, talking about how he wants to go to an environment that can really develop him and loves the opportunity in OKC, because OKC not only lets young players play, but they still hold them accountable while giving them playing time. I think he's a really good ball handler who can finish on both sides of the rim. However, there's times where his dribbling is a bit loose that I wonder if it'll get exposed more in the NBA than it did at the AAU level. But still, I like his ball handling ability. He can hit step backs and just these crazy shots over guys with ease. He really loves that step back. He really loves shooting over guys in the mid-range. It's really fun to watch him work against defenses. I love his rebounding ability, and you know that's been a big point of emphasis for the Thunder, to have 5 guys on the floor that can rebound, 5 guys on the floor that can rebound, then push the pace and play make and do all that stuff. So while I would not call him a plus playmaker, I would call Shaedon Sharpe a passable playmaker. I think that he can do playmaking things, keep your offense in rhythm, keep your offense going. If you're pairing that if you're pairing that kind of passable playmaking with Josh Giddey's elite playmaking and SGA's gravity, you're going to get a very good combination offensively that you're going to want to build around for a very, very, very long time. The weaknesses around Shaedon Sharpe is clarity on what happened at Kentucky. Why didn't he want to play? What's going on with his work ethic? Stuff like that needs to be cleared up, and stuff like that we're never going to know. We're never going to know the true story of what happened at Kentucky. We're never going to know kind of what his work ethic is. It's going to come down to that's the information that we do not have access to. Only teams that get to interview him and work him out and see him firsthand will get that info. And so we'll just have to see if time tells on that one. He fell asleep a lot defensively, off ball especially, but there's very few prospects who did not do that, especially in high school. So I'm not going to hold that too much against him. And that's consistent with my other draft profiles. So I say the same thing about guys whenever they fall asleep defensively, because it's very hard to stay engaged. And I can't use this analogy for Shaedon Sharpe, but I've often said it's very hard to stay engaged when you're playing Maryland on a Tuesday versus when you're playing the TD Garden on Tuesday. So I'll say it's very hard to stay engaged when you're playing Colorado Prep on a Tuesday versus playing in the TD Garden on the Tuesday. We're playing in Madison Square Garden on Thursday, right? So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. And then one weakness is actually one of his strengths. He relies heavily on those step backs. He's very comfortable doing it, but he relies heavily on step backs and shooting over guys. And I'm just not sure if that's going to play, especially his first few years in the league or first season in the league. It'll be some growing pains for him at the NBA level. So the big question, though, where is he mocked at? Where is he having the chance to kind of go, and how can the Thunder get their hands on him? The Ringer, Kevin O'Connor, has him at 4. ESPN has him at 7. The Athletic have him at 6. Bleacher Report has him at 7. CBS has 3 panelists. They go 6, 6, 7. NBC has him at 7. DraftNet has him at 7. Tankathon has him at 7. I have him at 5. And then Mavs Draft has him at 8. So anywhere from 8 to 4 is where you're going to find the range of Shaedon Sharpe. I think that it's very interesting to see kind of where Shaedon Sharpe will land and kind of how he will impact the next level. Let's talk ceiling. Let's talk floor availability and how he fits with the Thunder and how the Thunder can get their hands on him, all coming up. But first, I want to say right now, but our good friends over at Rock Auto. RockAuto.com is a family-owned business serving you auto parts online for 20 years. That's right, 20 years ago. You could have been going to RockAuto.com and finding all the parts that your car would ever need. But 20 years ago, you probably couldn't even work your email properly. That's how long they've been serving you at RockAuto.com. So check them out today, RockAuto.com. Tell them Locked On sent you and the how did you hear about this box, and they'll know what to do from there. My favorite part about RockAuto.com is that I know nothing about cars. Nothing about cars. Not a single thing. But I don't have to, because at RockAuto.com, what they do for me is that they give me the same reliably low price that they give everybody else. And folks, since it's online, they don't know that I know nothing about cars. They just think I'm any other person. Whereas if I go to a brick and mortar store, I'm going to walk in there and they're immediately going to know that I'm a sucker. So don't do that. Go to rockauto.com. Tell them Locked On sent you in the how did you hear about us box, and they'll know what to do from there. rockauto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. We are back on the Locked On Thunder Podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast for everything Big Board related and NBA Draft related. The coverage is awesome, and you're going to want to listen to them leading up to the NBA Draft. So, the Thunder info regarding Shaedon Sharpe. His future role with this team, I think he's a starter right away if he was on this team. I think he's a starter long-term, obviously, and the goal is for him to be your second guy, your second building block, your second option as a scorer, as an offensive weapon, next to SGA. And then Josh Giddey's that third guy who provides a ton as a playmaker, but we got to see him progress as a shooter and scorer before he's your second or first guy offensively as an offensive weapon. For NBA comps, Kevin O'Connor says he has shades of Paul George and Jalen Green and taller Bradley Beal. All very good comparisons, obviously. His ceiling to me is a superstar who's the best offensive player in this class. His floor is like an eighth man. I don't think that's as dramatic as he's out of the league, but I do think it's like an eighth, ninth, 10th man who's just a microwave scorer every second or third game whenever your team needs a spark. So it's a very high risk, high reward scenario here, but the ceiling is well worth it. And again, if it all panned out, you'd have a great offensive weapon in SGA, a great offensive weapon in Shaedon Sharpe, and a fantastic elite level playmaker in Josh Giddey to deliver them, opportunities. It'd be a force to be reckoned with. Let's just say that. How it impacts the roster? I mean, when you throw Sharpe, Giddey, Shea, Dort, Trey Mann, all these guys into a pot, the touches and touches and touches go down for Teo Maledon, go down for Ty Jerome, and guys like that. So those guys kind of go the way of the dodo bird. So I think that those guys would be on the chopping block if you were able to bring in Shaedon Sharpe. Why the Thunder should take Shaedon Sharpe? It's pretty simple. The Thunder sign off on him and like what they've heard from him in his camp and like his work ethic and like his upside and believe he can lock in defensively, it's a no-brainer. If you couple that with him falling closer to that 12 range, if he falls to that 8, 9, 10 range, that's a more realistic trade up for OKC. They can go up there and get him, and it's no harm, no foul, and you have yourself two of my top 5 prospects in this draft, assuming, of course, if they go chalk at number 2. So that's awesome. Why the Thunder shouldn't take him? If there's questions about his work ethic still after you've interviewed him and worked him out, plus he goes in that top 6 range. I don't think that the Thunder can get back in that top 6. I think that they can get back to 8 to 9 to 10. It'd be very hard for me to see them getting 4, 5, 6. So that's kind of where the sweet range is for a trade up with Shaedon Sharpe. But I really like Shaedon Sharpe. I had him at 4 on my board for a very long time. He only got dropped down to number 5 last week. but that's still a very high compliment. And if I really thought about it, I might put him back at 4, but I'm going to stick to my guns on this last big board and not change anything else. And I'll release that final big board next week on the Locked On Thunder podcast. So make sure you stay tuned and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. But I really like Shaedon Sharpe, and I'll be very jealous of whoever gets Shaedon Sharpe. And hopefully it's the Thunder. If the Thunder walk away with Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith Jr. or Parliament Carroll plus Shaedon Sharpe, they've got 2 of my top 5 guys, and you are dancing in the streets of Bricktown, and you're extremely excited, and we'll be having a party. So there you have it. What do you think about Shaedon Sharpe? Let me know in the comment section down below on YouTube. Let me know on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. And until tomorrow, whenever we're joined by Mavs Draft on Twitter, Richard Stamen, our draft expert, be good and be good to one another.